When I watched Naruto growing up, I believed that I could shoot for the stars, that anything was possible. It left me feeling that if I was willing to commit myself to stand tall and state what my vision was in singular pursuit, mountains would move. It's a story of faith in many ways. One thing that always jumped out at me was Naruto's likeness to the sun. Bright, spiky yellow hair, orange jumpsuit, and energy that can't be contained. He is a blazing character in both physical appearance and emotional temperament. Looking at Naruto now, at this stage in my life, the symbology is very interesting. The sun is a fascinating symbol as it crosses over with the archetype of the capital S self. So what is the self archetype? Well, Carl Jung described the self as representing the totality of the psyche, encompassing both the conscious and unconscious aspects of an individual. In essence, it goes beyond the personal identity of the individual. The self can be thought of as the archetype of wholeness. It's the ordering principle of the psyche. It brings the psyche together into a cohesive whole, and is typically symbolized with the image of the mandala. The sun as a symbol crosses over with the archetype of the self because it's the biggest, brightest star that brings all the planets, asteroids, and meteoroids into orbit. It brings the entire solar system together. One of the crucial functions of the self archetype is guiding the process of individuation. So what is individuation? Well, Jung described this as the lifelong process of one integrating and harmonizing all the different aspects of the psyche, both conscious and unconscious, to achieve a more complete and authentic individual. The self-archetype, therefore, is the ever-present guiding force within the psyche, forever whispering to the ego, pushing it along to realize and integrate more of the hidden dimensions within the unconscious. It seems to me that in many ways Naruto symbolizes the journey of individuation. Naruto is an orphan, and he is ostracized by his entire village. The cause of him being ostracized is the nine-tailed demon fox sealed within him, who is named Kurama. Kurama destroyed Naruto's home, the Hidden Leaf, when he was a baby. So the entire town associates him with Kurama and fears him. Despite his pain and loneliness, however, Naruto is a loud and rambunctious character. He looks to the previous 4 Hokages, leaders of the village, as inspiration. He points to them and proudly states to the village that one day he will become the next Hokage of the village, and everyone will acknowledge him. Here we can start to see the beginnings of the symbology of the self and individuation. This is because the Hokages of the Leaf Village are acting out the same ordering principle of the self archetype. They are the most powerful and trusted ninja of the village, which brings the rest of the village into harmony and alignment, just like the sun bringing the planets into orbit. So despite being an outcast, Naruto is reaching for this ordering principle from day one. He believes in it. In essence, he is reaching for it in order to belong within the village. So psychologically, we can think of Naruto as the ego. The ego is submitting to the greater self in order to take its proper place. When the ego submits to the self, it grows much more rapidly because it is willing to face the unconscious voluntarily and then integrate it. So on the journey of individuation in one's facing of the unconscious, there is the confrontation with the shadow. The shadow is the repressed, denied, and feared parts of the psyche. In Naruto, the shadow is very much symbolized by Kurama, the nine-tailed demon fox within him. It gives him great strength, but he has no control over it. So while it protects him throughout the show, it's often accompanied with a loss of control and destruction. Considering its destructive capabilities, Naruto does his best to suppress it. However, it's not until Naruto goes within and befriends Kurama that the fox's power becomes readily available to him. Suddenly he has full access to Kurama's unbelievable power, but without any loss of control. So Naruto integrates his shadow and becomes more powerful and is closer to his goal of becoming Hokage. In other words, Naruto is developing along the journey of individuation. As Naruto develops, he starts to become a lot more accepted and less feared in the village. Slowly but surely, he becomes a cherished member of the village and starts to find his sense of belonging. One of the most inspiring things about Naruto is his relentless determination to develop. He had his higher goal of becoming Hokage, which we can symbolically understand as the call of the self archetype. Naruto never hesitated to sacrifice himself in order to fulfill the call. He was willing to suffer in order to develop and get closer to his goal, whether that was on a mission or him learning a new jutsu. This lays out another essential part of individuation. During the process of individuation, the ego is expanding and growing by integrating more of the psyche that has been unconscious up until that point. But this is often a painful process. It takes courage. This is because we don't know what's lurking in the unconscious. Sometimes it can be scarier and harder to face than others, but either way, the ego goes through a death and rebirth. You see, the ego has its current structure and sense of itself, which is safe and familiar. So to be confronted with an aspect of the psyche that was unconscious means the ego, as it understands itself, is changed forever. The personality is no longer what it had been up until that point. While this brings with it a great gift of a fuller, more authentic individual, the process is inevitably difficult. Naruto eventually makes it all the way to the top. He becomes Hokage, and is beloved by the village, so Naruto accepts the self and its demands of him, and he never stops growing until he becomes the embodiment of the self archetype. One way or another, the self will press itself upon the ego. We have a choice to either lean in voluntarily and go on a great adventure of meaning and growth, or we resist it and feel tormented by the demands of the self, for the ego to die and be reborn as we cling on to what we know for dear life. Looking at Naruto's example, I believe it teaches us something valuable, that we shouldn't resist the call of the self, but rather, we should embrace it fully. You've been watching Archetypal Wisdom. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Stay wise.